I'm going to go ahead and get started. We want to say thank you. We really do. We want to say thank you so much for all that each one of you do for us and the Christian Center as a whole, and just this body is a source of encouragement for us. And so we do want to say thank you, truly. We want to have a time that we can share about what God has been doing. We want to update some of you who may not know who exactly we are. Or what are we doing, and kind of update since the last time we were here, about 2 years ago. We were just talking, it doesn't seem like it's been that long. And so we want to update a little bit. We want to show a little quick video so that you can kind of see the sights of what we've been doing, hear some of the sounds of what we've been hearing, and kind of give you just a bigger picture about what the Lord has been doing in our hearts and our lives in the last few years. And then we'll talk more, and if you have questions, feel free to say, like, wait, I don't fully understand that, or I always wanted to ask you this, because now's your time. And we'll talk a little about what the Lord has been doing and what we're doing now, and what's going forward in the future. Sounds good?
Yes.
All right.
We are the Webbers. Our family has been serving in East Africa since 2013, and specifically in Chogoria, Kenya, for almost 2 years. We are part of a multi-ethnic, interdenominational team of believers that is partnering with the PCEA Chogoria Hospital to bring the hope of the gospel to those in our community, and indirectly to some of the neediest communities across East Africa. We see our family's ministry as threefold. First, at the hospital, Derek seeks to train and equip Kenyan health professionals in evidence-based, holistic, and Christ-centered care. Secondly, at home, Lauren seeks to train our children and the children in our neighborhood to be grounded in God's Word and to reflect Christ's love within their homes and community. Lastly, within our community, our family seeks to use the means of hospitality to demonstrate and build gospel-centered community amongst those with whom we live and work.
started, show of hands, who was here 2 years ago? Okay, a good number of you guys. Who remembers anything? 2 years ago? Good number of you guys. Okay, so as we when we were here 2 years ago, we were coming off of spending our first 2 years on the field in Uganda, where we faced a number of hardships, kind of a series of unfortunate events that took place while we were in Uganda. We were in a real, we were just downtrodden. We were really weary after our first 2 years, and going over there with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and it was taxing on our family. So I think at that point in time, when we were returning to the field, we were going to be returning to Chogoria, Kenya, to do a 1-year internship at the PCEA Chogoria Hospital, where Derek was going to receive some further medical training, working alongside some physician residents there, and kind of being mentored by, at that point in time, there was one family that had been serving as missionaries at Chogoria for about 2 years. And so Derek was going to be working with the husband, who is an emergency room physician there. So we went to Chogoria and really fell in love with that place. Realized that it was a really good fit for our family, our gifts, our stage of life with having young kids. And after real prayerful consideration, the plan was still to return to Uganda after the 1 year, but we really felt like as a family, for us to return to Uganda, there would have to be some certain things in place in order for us to stay healthy as a family and to maintain our longevity on the mission field, or else we're going to be in crash and burn mode. And so, by the Lord's providential hands, those doors happened to close in Uganda. The certain things that we felt like we needed there didn't come to fruition during that time. And so because we were really thriving as a family in Chogoria and had received an invitation to stay there, we really felt the Lord's confirmation for this season of time, however long that may be, to stay put and to minister in a real healthy environment for our family. So we're really thrilled and blessed that God directed us in that path. We're really thankful that you guys and so many of our supporters have stayed with us, encouraged us, prayed for us during that transition, because it's not an easy decision to come to, and we were just relied so much on your prayers for discernment and just encouragement to follow the Lord's leading wherever that might be. So we thank you. We're now in Chogoria. We have been there. I guess if you include the internship, that would be since January of 2016. Hold on, 2016.
2016.
2016. Yeah. We've spent the last 2 years now in Chogoria. Yeah, so
Time
that's
flies when you're having fun, right?
yeah, no, it does. So I'll let you share after that first year of internship, kind of what your new role has.
Yeah. So one of the things that we feel very strongly about in our role is to be preparing and equipping, and that was something that we just hadn't had an opportunity to be able to jump into when we were in Uganda. And what I mean by that is we had no other Ugandan medical personnel that we could be working alongside. And in Chogoria, we have a number of people that we can help invest in, and so that we can do this idea of multiplication with the gospel, multiplication with our skills, and multiplication within medical ministry. So we have clinical officers, we have medical officers, which are kind of like mid-levels, and physicians that are in training. We also have residents, which are doctors also in training, and they're all there for a period of time. captive audience. Usually we have 15 to 20 clinical officers and medical officers in training for 1 year. And we have residents for 4 years. And our clinical and medical officers, some of them are, well, they're all placed there by the government. And so some of them are not Christian, and some of them are Christians. And so we have an idea that we can impart to them truths of the gospel in our community. We can impart to them good medical practices, and we can really be able to impact their future as the healthcare providers in the entire country of Kenya. And so really we look at this as the government sending their trainees to be able to impact the entire country of Kenya. We also have good, solid Christians that are applying to come and work with us for 4 years in a residency program. And so that is to prepare Africans from East Africa to be missionaries themselves, if you will. And so right now we have 5 from South Sudan, from the Congo, 2 from Burundi, 1 from Kenya. And so we have these young men that are wanting to be discipled and be further equipped in their medical training. And so right now, I'm one of 7 healthcare workers. So I'm a physician assistant by training, and we have 6 physicians that are there on our team. When we first got there, like Lauren said, there was 1. And so the Lord has really blessed us with families and some single people that have physicians that have joined our team to be able to have a very well-rounded medical practice, if you will. Alongside, and this is very vital, alongside our Kenyan physicians. So right there at the hospital, we have 2 surgeons, an obstetrician, and I believe 2 to 3 regular family medicine doctors that are Kenyan by nationality, and we can work alongside with them. So we have this multi-ethnic approach to this mission that we are on. And I think that is very unique, that the Lord has brought us to be in a position like this. It's something that is dear to our hearts. It's not just us as Americans going in there, we're partnering. And that was a big key to why we feel serving in Shagoria is vital. We didn't quite have that when we were in Uganda, and it was a very difficult time. And so my role is to help really try and train and equip clinical officers in an outpatient setting. And so for the outpatient services, it's kind of encompasses, if you got to go to the doctor, who do you see? You generally see a clinical officer first. Or if you have an emergency, the emergency room, which is called casualty, is run by clinical officers. And so with my day-to-day responsibilities at the hospital, that's what I'm doing. We feel that our mission and our time there is not just one of medicine and physical needs, but also the spiritual aspect. If we didn't combine them, we wouldn't be missionaries. We wouldn't be fulfilling our call. And so the other aspects that I work with is with the chaplains and work a few committees at the hospital to be able to bring in the gospel through providing services to those who are poor, who can't afford it. In our community, we are doing Bible studies and spiritual curriculum. And so we feel like it's a very good balancing of both of those worlds, if that makes sense. What else? The hospital. Let Lauren tell you more about what she does at home, because there's a lot.
So I am a nurse by trade, and I became a nurse to use it on the mission field one day, and God hasn't opened that door yet because He has blessed me with children, which I am very blessed by. So my primary role right now is in the home, homeschooling our children, and bringing in children from our little community, which is primarily the children of our Kenyan colleagues. There's a couple American kids, two other American kids amongst our missionary team, but there's a lot of Kenyan kids from our Kenyan colleagues that live on the compound with us. So kind of bringing them in, also doing some basic Bible teaching, Bible studies, backyard Bible clubs, just kind of carrying them along with daily life that I do with our kids at home. And kind of together, and as a family, we have really felt the Lord leading us just into ministry of hospitality, of having people in our home, having people over for dinner, and hosting Bible study in our house, and having the Lord led us to start a prayer group on Saturdays that we do. So just inviting people into our home. And let me tell you, it's kind of hard to do. The more kids you have, the more like your sin and their sin is spilling over all over the place. So, you know, when I'm struggling to like even get dinner on the table for my kids, it's kind of overwhelming to think that like, oh, we've got our Kenyan friends coming over for dinner tonight too, and they're gonna see my kids throwing a fit at the table. They're gonna see Daddy having to take them to get disciplined. You know, they're gonna see like that our life is really kind of messy at times. And so it has been really a step of faith for me to relinquish the expectation that like as a missionary I have to have it all together, or you know that people you know, they just have these preconceived notions about missionaries that like you're holier or your kids are better behaved or different things. And so inviting them into your home and sharing a meal and playing games or whatever, they really see that like it really is kind
We're
of
sinners saved by grace.
yeah. And daily and need of it all the time. We've really seen God use that because we as Christians, we have been called to parent and disciple our children in a different manner. Whether that would be living here, we would be called the same way, to live counterculturally, and to really seek the scriptures for how to disciple our children and how to raise them up in the Lord. And yeah, it's messy a lot of times. So it is a hard thing to invite people into that. And they've asked a lot of questions. They've seen my homeschool stuff on the wall and asked like, you know, what are you teaching your kids? And just
why are you even teaching your children?
Why are you? Yeah.
The culture there is you send your children to boarding school
in third grade.
At third grade.
Yeah. And there's a boarding school. I mean, right next to our.
We can throw a rock and
Yeah.
hit it.
And they start classes 6 o'clock in the morning. They go till like 5 o'clock at night. It's really rigorous or demanding. And so to model a different lifestyle and one that is really a calling for us has really been an outlet that the Lord has used, a platform for us to speak about what it means to be a Christ-centered family and how to raise our children biblically. Yeah.
The Lord, we feel like we have the opportunity to try and help build a gospel community. One that is not hiding behind what we feel like we need to show, a good mask, a good foot forward, whatever we want to call it, but to be able to be real and honest with everyone, with the doctors in training, with our colleagues, with the hospital staff, a number of things. I forgot to mention the hospital that we are at is a 300-bed hospital with surgery services, OBGYN services, dialysis, dental unit, and so we feel like the Lord has really called a lot of people together for the work that He has for us there. We are involved in a local church. There, in between where we live and the hospital, we have numerous opportunities to be able to share on a Sunday morning, be asked to preach, which I do a couple of times. And like Lauren mentioned, we have a rotating Monday night Bible study at our house. One of the interesting things is there is a very hierarchical view in medicine in Kenya. If you are the surgeon, if you are the doctor, you're kind of there at the top, and everybody kind of, bows down, but there's a pecking order, definitely. And so one of the things that us and our Kenyan colleagues are trying to do is to abolish that and to show that we will have our medical students visiting, and we will have them in our house, and we will eat with them, and we will share, and we will little Bible study. And so we're showing the gospel in action, and that there's none of this, different levels at the foot of the cross. No, we're all there the same. And that speaks volumes in a culture that there is a bit of a class system that is there. And so that's one of the aspects of what we feel like the Lord has called us to, is to bring gospel community to our community. Some of you may have recently read the newsletter we had put out. A community is not just a community that celebrates together, but also that grieves together. Just in the past 2 weeks since we've been back here in the States, we've had some very drastic, tragic losses in our community. We've had one of the chaplains at the hospital. There's 5 chaplains that we know. I work with 3 of them mainly, and one of them committed suicide. And that's very tragic. It's someone that we know personally and we've worked with. And so we don't know all the ins and outs, but that's a huge loss to our entire hospital staff to have one of our chaplains go that way. We don't know all the circumstances regarding that. So keep us and our ministry staff, our hospital staff in prayer, because he feels there's a void there now. We also had one of our administrators, her 18-month-old son, who was born when we were there, when she was one of our neighbors. He got sick and got admitted to the hospital, had a few episodes of convulsions, and died. And so we don't even know exactly the ins and outs of what happened. So there's some tragic loss initially that has happened in our community while we have been away. And that weighs heavy on our hearts. We know that our community is struggling because of that. We know that there's a lot of opposition to what we feel like the Lord is calling us to do, to not just us personally, but our entire team of believers that are working there. And so, for whatever reason, we feel that this is some opposition. So continue to be praying for us and our community there. Anything else you want to add?
I think so.
We wanted to kind of open it up to questions to make sure that you guys can have some time to ask us some questions. Yes, Jim?
Well, I'm just interested in you said you have people over for dinner. What's your typical dinner? I have no idea.
That's a good question.
What do you guys
What do we normally eat?
Well,
I know you eat food.
it also kind of depends on our relationship with them. If I feel confident, if I feel comfortable enough that like they're not going to drastically judge me, then I'll just fix an American meal. But if I feel like, if this person does not like my meal, they might not come back to my house, then I will either attempt to cook Kenyan, something that I know they would enjoy.
So what's Kenyan?
What would be Kenyan food?
Yeah.
Or I have somebody who I know can cook Kenyan food,
Yes.
like cook it. And again, depending on if they've been. So Kenyan food would be rice and beans, stew, which is
Stewed meat, generally goat is the
goat or
preferred.
chicken, and so vegetables, tomato, onion, garlic, kind of.
Lentil soup,
Lentil is a big
a lot
staple.
of lentils.
Sukuma wiki, which is greens.
Kale.
It's kind of steamed kale. Chapati.
Which is like
everyone.
flatbread.
Yeah, it's kind of like a thick tortilla.
A really thick, fluffy,
Tortilla.
amazing tasty.
Yes. Yes, it is really good.
It's got lots of lard and butter.
Amen.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what else. There's some other things that are kind of like a mashed potato dish, but it's actually banana.
Bananas, potatoes, and
But they're
peas.
bananas. You have different types of bananas. The bananas that they use are actually not like sweet bananas that you would eat as a fruit. It's actually a starchy banana that really tastes more like mashed potatoes. Yeah. There's a lot of fruit. Yeah.
A lot, yeah, fruit, and they eat a lot of, or they drink a lot of chai, a lot of tea. So
They'll tend to drink hot drinks like chai with their meal. So
and if it's American, then it's probably spaghetti.
yeah. So if they're a close friend, I won't try that hard because I know they'll probably still come back to our house. Sorry, you're getting spaghetti tonight. But if it's maybe their first time, then I'll attempt Kenyan fare. Yeah.
I would like to ask a question about your meal.
Uh-huh.
And when I say that, you talked about having problems. You have problems because your household is with 3 kids and you're all sitting around this new table or table with new friends and you're trying to make an impression and it's a little difficult to make that impression because of your kids.
Yeah.
And that's normal. And I don't know how they accept that normalcy. And how are you received as a group?
Good question. You know, I guess where there really is a lot of grace is that Kenyan children actually do not have a lot of boundaries and a lot of discipline. Right. Yeah. So generally, Kenyan kids tend to be louder and rowdier than my kids because there isn't a lot of expectation. I'm from the South, so I care heavily about Southern hospitality. And there is no concept for like table manners or things like that. So where it actually comes in is that I do have expectations for my children of how to act at the dinner table and what types of conversation we as a family have at the table and how to interact with other adults who are there or that kind of thing. So, you know, it would probably be more culturally appropriate if I just went and sent my kids over to the corner and let them spill their food everywhere and do their own thing and be as rowdy as they wanted to be while the parents sat at the table and conversed together. And that would be culturally appropriate. But we consider our meal times to be a sacred family time. And so we do have kind of expectations of our kids at dinner time. So it is kind of awkward sometimes when I'm correcting my children or trying to engage my children in some of the conversation that we're having, when that might not be a consideration. But again, it's eye-opening for people.
Well, let me ask you,
Yeah.
how eye-opening, when you do this, what is your reception by them? What kind of reception do you have by them? I didn't mean to.
No. That's
That's
usually.
Derek's
Well,
typical.
I will say this.
Yeah.
I will say this. I think people are surprised that children, even young children, can rise to a certain expectation of them. They are very surprised. And I shared this example because it's kind of humorous, but we were at one of our pizza night fellowships on Friday nights. And it's a great ministry outlet, but for our family, it's sometimes a drain because I cook most
It's a
of the
lot of work.
pizzas. It's a lot of work, and then there's like 10 to 15 kids, completely undisciplined, and the fellowship time is really it's more for the adults to come together after a hard week at the hospital and glean from one another and encourage one another. So then you have all of these kids that are running around
You tend to be shouting over the children to talk to the person next to you.
and the kids are all over the place. There's no, there's just no order whatsoever. Yeah. So sometimes it's frustrating for our family. And there was one time where the kids were out in the hallway making a huge ruckus. I think Derek had had a hard week, and so he just went out there and lit into all of them. Every last one. And the whole room,
My
this.
self-control went away.
And and so I'm sitting in there with all of our friends and stuff, and everybody gets quiet. And I was
Pin
like,
drop quiet. And I
oh
thought,
man.
oh my gosh, what did I do? I yelled at everybody's children.
Yeah, something that you really don't do in
No.
that culture. And so everybody's just kind of like, oh, wow. But as Derek came back in, I could tell he was embarrassed. Everybody started clapping. Finally, somebody has taken the reins. And since that time, that shut it up from the peanut gallery the rest of the night. and then since that time, different it has kind of become different people's jobs for the night
This has
to
been taken on by our Kenyan colleagues to be able to say, even some of the ones without children, hey, I'll do something with the children
Yeah.
tonight.
so different ones. And so I think they realized too that this is a distraction, and really, children should be a part of the fellowship and a contributory part, and not something that we're trying to shout over and they're doing their thing and we're trying to compete with our thing. And so I think they've been able to see that there is a lot that kids can contribute to when they are controlled and entertained appropriately. And so even though that was probably a faux pas at the moment, they have kind of taken on that role themselves now and have a point person each week to manage the kids. So yeah. And I think
so
people
that's
just didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
How to take charge in a positive way,
And I think,
I don't know that was necessarily the best way,
I think this, we call ourselves a community because this is what we do life. This is how we do life together. We make mistakes, we ask forgiveness, and so I think that's one of the things that is very dynamic. That's one thing that is very, in the Kenyan culture, we do life together. It's very communal living, if you will. And so that's right for the gospel. That's right to live in community and share the love of God and what that really means. Because it's not static, it's very dynamic. And it's very in your face, and it's not user friendly, and it's that's where the gospel meets us. Yeah. That's a good question.
I wanted to ask Lauren, have your children, since you homeschool, have your children picked up some Kenyan phrases, and can they speak some of the language?
Yes. Now, I will not say since you homeschool, because that hadn't been any of my doing. When we first arrived in Kenya, and Derek jumped into his internship, the kids and I spent 3 months in intense Swahili training, and the kids also had their little kids program.
The
They had a
parents and the
personal
teacher,
tutor.
the parents and the kids all had tutors to do 3 months of Swahili.
Yeah.
Language learning.
So they did. They picked up on a lot. Unfortunately, then when we picked up homeschooling, Mama has not been that good with maintaining the Swahili. So I think they still understand more than they probably speak. When they have their friends over, a lot of times it's kind of 50-50. And they just, I think they catch a lot of it. They don't even kind of notice the difference. I wish I could say I was able to be more consistent about speaking it in our home. Yeah, probably one of the many areas I need to be doing
Where
better.
you are now, do you feel there's less political unrest? Because I remember when you were here 2 years ago, there were still some
Yeah.
areas that was.
Yeah.
a little bit-
In August, they had their general elections, and what that was is for the change in the presidency or whatnot. Two big parties, they don't get along, they all want to be in power. And, yeah.
You don't say. All that was
so foreign.
not that many differences.
And so they, one guy said foul ball, they said, no, this election was rigged, and then they went to the Supreme Court. Then they overturned the election,
Yes.
and then they had scheduled another election for the 26th or 28th of October. The week before, the opposition party said, oh, it's still rigged, we're not even going to participate. And then on election day, they said, go fight at the polls. And so they had they had another election, and the same guy got elected in, and it's kind of fizzled after that. So there hasn't been any really big opposition since the end of October. But during that time, we have like 4 different mission agencies that work at the hospital. Each one of us had our evacuation security protocols in place, go bags, and just trying to make sure that if civil unrest came to our area, we knew what to
Be
do
ready.
and to be ready. Because there has been lots of violence in the past. And so as far as security and where we are, there's mainly one tribe. It's the Kamiru tribe. If you've got like a 50-50 between more than one tribe, you tend to see a lot more unrest because of tribalism. But where we are, there's one tribe, and our hospital really wants to not have anything happen to us, and so they've definitely been alerted. And so during that, they posted more security guards and things of that sort. So we feel safe where we're at. We definitely have a heightened sense of awareness of security and issues when we travel throughout Kenya or to Nairobi, things of that sort. That's a good question.
You talked earlier about opposition that you encountered. Can you elaborate? Was that on a personal or a professional level?
When I was talking about the elections,
No.
No,
Earlier
I
when
think
you
you're
were
talking about kind of like
you-
some
what
spiritual
you do.
opposition. against
oh,
what we do.
okay, yes. I think I was kind of talking about, when I was talking about the tragedy and the losses that we've had,
Yeah.
I think that there is some spiritual opposition to what we are doing and planning to do in Chiguria. How does that manifest? In a number of ways. And I think that these losses, I personally probably would put them in that, as in when we, when you're taking out chaplains who are preaching the gospel, that's what I would equate as opposition. We have not felt like physical opposition or anything, I would say, in our roles against us or the hospital, but I feel like our enemy, the devil, the evil one, is against what we are doing there. When I've talked to the chaplains in the past, they are very effective at communicating the gospel. I would like to say I'm just as effective, but not quite. I've been able to pray with people and share, but when I talk to the chaplains, there are numerous people that they're leading to the Lord that are in the hospital. They can be able to speak the gospel and touch people where they are at in their language much clearer and more accurately with more effectiveness than what I can do. And I've seen that. And so talking to them, we have Muslims that are coming to the Lord and taking their hats and throwing them on the ground, saying, I'm done with Islam. I see the love of God here. And I'm like, this is amazing. And so we see that there is advancement of God's kingdom through what we are collectively doing. And so that's why it's such a loss to be able to have one of our fighters, one of the ones who is, get discouraged to the point of taking his own life. And so that's what I mean by opposition. Yeah, so that's a really good.
Another facet on opposition to, I feel like, is just like when you're living cross-culturally, you're just making mistakes every day. Every day. Even we were talking with the Bittners today. You know, we've had just a number of like visitors come through the hospital to help in various capacities, and some are just on fire for the Lord and like just really passionate about seeing the gospel go forth, and we love these guys. But then we've had some of our like our chaplains or whatever come back later and say, oh, they cannot share like that. You can't tell someone who is dying that they are dying and they need to know Jesus. Like you just, you know, and they had good intentions. Like, oh my goodness, this guy is probably going to meet his maker in the next couple days. He needs to know the Lord, or at least hear the gospel, and I'm going to make sure that he hears it. Something that that we would applaud just the passion there, but not even us not realizing that there is a very culturally appropriate way of doing that. It's a very indirect culture. So usually you do not tell someone who is maybe on the trajectory of dying that they are dying. You can tell all of their family members, you can tell everybody else, but don't tell that patient. Which is good.
A cultural insight that we've learned is like, if we know someone who is having a terminal illness, they generally don't know. Their family, their spouse, their sons, their daughters, you know, their mother, whatever, will know, and that's who you communicate with, like diagnosis with, and like end of life issues. That's like backwards to our American culture, and if we
Almost
don't-
seems unethical.
Almost seems
sometimes
unethical.
that you're keeping information from
the actual patient.
patient.
And so these cultural insights that we are learning the hard way, or as Westerners we are learning the hard way, we're trying to understand more about that so we can better communicate the gospel and demonstrate the gospel. And so that's why it takes our chaplains and a team to be able to help communicate the gospel in those situations.
So
When you're talking to the families, do the families ever talk to the dying person of what you've told them?
They do it. I don't want to say they do it in their own way, but that's kind of how I understand it. Yes. Yeah.
I don't think they would ever actually say.
Not directly.
Yeah.
It's a very indirect way of communicating, which I'm still trying to wrap my brain around that. To be perfectly honest, it's a different way of communicating what's going on, but in a non-confrontational, indirect way. If that makes sense. Yes.
You're heading into your third year, and how are you organized in terms of your funding to be there and versus the hospital and how it's funded, just generally?
Yeah, no, that's great. All of us who are missionaries here at the hospital, we receive no money or funds or anything from the hospital itself, so we're not employees, we're all volunteers. And so we have the responsibility to raise our own support to be able to be there. We are going into our third year there. We're actually in our
I think we're going into our fourth year.
We're going into our fourth year in our
Right.
time
Right.
of being in
Third
East
year in
Africa.
Chikoria.
And the Lord has been extremely faithful. You know, we started out in 2013 trying to raise funds to be able to go, and the Lord has continually met that goal. It's not anything that we've been doing, or, you know, and so He has been very faithful. So our support has been consistent. Now, over those 4.5 years, we've had people come on and go off and things of that sort. But we've been seeing that He's been continuing that. It's nice to be able to come here and say that.
Yeah.
Right.
Usually that's not always the case.
Yeah.
Hey, Derek,
Yeah.
would it be okay if I shared that you guys are in your 4th year and a lot of the people who signed up to support you committed to 5 years?
Correct.
So you are coming to a window where you might be seeing people drop off.
Correct. Correct.
That is true.
That is true.
And we've added 2 kids since we had done the budget. So I think we'll probably be reconfiguring the budget sometime this year.
I know.
So that'll probably coincide with, our 5-year commitment. So we're going into a next year where we're recognizing the possibility that some people are going to have to finish their commitment
Correct.
and come off, and that's okay. We've supported missionaries for a season of time, and we've had to come off at certain times. But we have also seen God be very, very faithful to us, and so we're just trusting that
That's great.
He will continue His faithfulness as long as we are to be there.
And on the tail end of that, like we've shared a few times today in other scenarios, when we talk to our Kenyans, the Kenyans that we work with in the hospital, they think we're absolutely crazy to be living on support like we are, if that makes sense. It does not make sense in that context. They say, how actually does that work? But they were very appreciative of us being there.
Would you tell me what your day, if there is ever a
Typical
typical day for you?
Yes. Yeah. So Jack generally wakes us up in the morning. I go. I'm blessed to be able to go down at the hospital around 8 o'clock in the morning. So I have our mornings to be able to have breakfast and mornings with our family, which generally starts around 6 or so. Get the kids up, get 2 hours, have breakfast with them and coffee initially first, lots of it, and then
Kenyan coffee.
yes. And then so I go down to the hospital around 8 o'clock or just before 8. We have morning a lecture series, medical teaching time, and we take turns rotating doing different medical lectures because we have people who are learning. And then I usually go to the outpatient department around 9. It's usually an hour. And I'm in the outpatient department with one of our clinical officers till around noon or 1. And so there I'm seeing patients with the clinical officer. And if I'm called to, I kind of like jump in between a bunch of different rooms, like whenever they need me or whatnot. Kind of rotate between them. We generally have 3 rooms running. And usually the outpatient department sees about 150 patients to 300 a day. And then I go home for lunch, and I get to see my family at lunch. That is nice. It's about a 3-minute walk, 5-minute walk maybe. I go slow from the hospital to where we live, because we live on the hospital compound. And then as soon as I'm done with lunch, I go back down and I kind of do the next segment until 5 when the outpatient department closes. So that's generally my day. Interspersed, if we happen to be in between patients, I tackle emails. I also host a lot of visitors for the hospital, as in I help schedule, coordinate where they are, I meet them, I give them tours of the hospital, give them some cultural insights so they don't make any mistake, as many mistakes, and whatever else I'm asked to do at the hospital. And what I mean by that is there's certain people that are identified as like MacGyvers or go-to people. Something just broke. Can you help us? Or something of
There
that
aren't
sort.
certain people, it's just him. I mean, let's be honest.
A number of times I get a call, my house is flooding, would you mind coming and helping? Things of that sort.
We need to resuscitate someone, and
Yeah, we need the
cord isn't working.
Sorry. Yes, the paddles.
Where'd they go?
Yeah, things of that sort.
Where are they?
Yeah. Can you bring the crash cart? So roughly it's amazing that it goes until around 5, and then I get to come home with the family and help Lauren in the evenings with that. And usually Mondays and Fridays we have
Bible study, or pizza night.
pizza night, or another night of the week, we'll have a meeting with teams. And then Saturdays we have prayer meetings, and Sundays we have church.
And Derek, when you say you show the visitors around and things like that, you're talking about short-term missionaries that are coming in there, right?
Correct. For the 2017 year, we have had 230 people scheduled to come. We're not quite done with the year yet, so we've got like 200.
It's a huge role for him, because if you think, like when we arrived in 2016, there was that only one other missionary family, and they had only been there 2 years. So in the 2016 time period, I think there had been about 75 short-term visitors come through the hospital. And then that family had, after about 6 months, we overlapped with them about 6 months before they went home for a 1-year home assignment, and so they've just now returned. So during that time when they were away, like Derek mentioned, we've had a number of longer-term missionaries join our team, but of course, with that, you get a lot more short-term people coming just from the network of missionaries and people who find out about Chagorria. So yeah, we went from having about 75 visitors in 2016 to when Derek took over that role this last year, we've had about 230.
What does short term look like? What do you?
Anywhere from 4 days to a month, or to 4 months.
Yeah, Some people, and they'll be from all over, Europe, South Africa,
from medical
US.
students, from other visiting Kenyan physicians, to dental teams, to nursing groups, to physicians. We've had a few mid-levels like a nurse practitioner or a PA arrive, and so a number.
So do they serve? Do they actually do things when they come as short-term missionaries, or are they just observing?
Both.
Okay.
Both do, or I should say yes. So if you're there for 4 days, you're not really doing a whole lot. You're just kind of seeing what's going on. We're kind of giving you the big swath. Sometimes we have people that are going to be out of the country or away doing teaching at another facility, and so if you're there for a number of time, we can plug you into doing teaching rounds and things of what you saw in the video. And so a lot of times we will have them plugged into rounding with patients and seeing stuff. There's a learning curve, and so we can't like say, well, here's the car keys, just go and have fun. So there has to be a lot of hand-in-hand hand-holding also. But yeah.
You say you have surgeons there? Like, how many surgeons?
We have 2 Kenyan surgeons.
Now, do they do surgeries every day, pretty much?
Pretty much.
Do you assist with the surgeries?
Yeah, I spent 3 months in the surgery department, and so yeah, I did quite a bit. It was really, really fun. That was initially my training. Well, it wasn't really that fun.
It was fun for him. We did not see him at all.
Yeah.
It was not fun for me.
Yeah, so for several months there, I was be able to assist in surgery and things of that sort.
You might mention they have a pretty good website that a lot of people.
Exactly. One of the things we have up here are some prayer cards and these fantastic little pamphlets that I have not put together, that I've just printed, that talk about the hospital and have the website, I believe, on here. But you can look it up and you can see more about what's going on there at the hospital, and you can see like what organizations are really there represented. Samaritan's Purse and World Gospel Mission, Surge, which is our organization, and Christ Health Service Corps, and Medical Benevolence Fund, which is fantastic because it really helps us to be able to reach out to people who have no money for surgeries and care and things of that sort.
So these surgeons long-term?
Yes, they are. They're missionaries in their own right. They are not from Chagorria, and they've been trained there in Kenya. One of them went through the Pan-African College of Surgeons, which is generally at one of these larger mission hospitals, trained by doctors from the US and the UK, and good surgeons that can do a lot of things. They're They're run right in.
Yeah, they are.
We're hoping to eventually get another surgeon from Samaritan's Purse to come on for 2 years to help with that. One of the surgeons is married to the obstetrician, and so, she's always in the OR on Wednesdays doing C-sections and training other doctors how to do C-sections and hysterectomies and things of that.
Have you done a C-section?
I stayed away from C-section.
They tried to force him into
Yeah,
it.
I know. One of the things I didn't talk about, right, I don't have the responsibility as of this last term is to take call, as in get called in the middle of the night to come down and do said C-sections. Let's. So,
Derek, do you have prayer cards up there? Does that have contact information on it?
for us, yes.
Okay, good, because we can follow along, get on their newsletter list, and also, if you guys feel led to donate directly to them as well. Why don't we take one more question, and then we can kind of officially wrap it up, and if you have more questions, just come up and talk. Derek, George, I saw you hand up a couple times. You want to ask the last question?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. One is, how far is this from, I remember you talking about where you were at before.
Yes.
And then you were going away to go to get more education because they were sorely lacking in that place.
Yes, yes.
So how far away is this from
there.
Uganda to Kenya? Is it-
Very, yes, very, very.
It'd probably be a 2-day drive.
Yeah,
It's
at
full on 2-day
At
drive.
least a full.
So it's like 15 miles or so?
Exactly.
And another question was, I remember that you described sort of almost like black magic beliefs that they had there.
Correct, yes,
And
yes, yes.
so I'm wondering, is this a more educated area? Are the beliefs similar? I hear you talking about Muslims converting.
Yes,
I don't remember if you said there was Muslims there or not, but I mean,
Yes. That's a very good question. That's a very good question. Yeah, like going back to the travel situation, we are about 2 to 3 days travel from where we were in Uganda. Going across the border into Kenya. We're about 5 to 6 hours north of Nairobi, which is a big hub in East Africa. So if you ever see Nairobi on a map, we're right in the middle of Kenya. And we're actually at the base of Mount Kenya, which is the highest peak in Kenya. And we're actually about 5,500 feet. So we're pretty high in elevation, which makes it extremely nice climate. It doesn't get extremely hot like it was in scorching hot, like we were in Bundibugyo. It's more mild. As far as that, as far as, yes, we do, so Chagouria Mission Hospital was started in the 1920s by Scottish Presbyterian missionaries. So one of the things about the area in which we live in, there has been people working and spreading the gospel for a number of years, which has laid the groundwork for the gospel to go forth. As in, it's a different feeling. The beliefs there are different than where we were in Bundibugyo. In Bundibugyo, the gospel has only been there since the late 80s and early 90s. And so what we would consider, the cultural beliefs and practices were in your face and very evident. There are, it is there in Chagouria, it's just maybe a little bit more down below the surface. There are what we would consider the traditional animistic beliefs of we need to protect ourselves against curses, and we need to have charms and things of that sort, and we need to go to the witch doctor, if you will, before we go to the American doctor or the medical doctor. That is there, but it is a bit more subterranean, if you will. We still see people who have not come to us because of those reasons, but it may not be as
Evidence.
evident. I still see people that when I'm doing an examination and I'm feeling their body and looking at their skin and stuff, they still have this whole side full of cuttings from the witch doctor, bleeding, things of that sort. Or the traditional.
And there's definitely topics of conversation that people will not talk to you about, that are just taboo topics, and because of the belief that if they speak about these certain topics, then the spirits will hear, and you will be cursed, or bad luck will be brought upon you, and things like that. So even in gospel circles where there are believers and there has been supposedly freedom brought into that place, you still see people really in bondage to fear that speaking about certain things will bring on
Bad outcomes.
Bad outcomes.
Yeah, definitely. There is a Muslim population. I will say that because the hospital is rather large for this area, like there's nothing really in Chikoria except for the hospital. And so with that, the area in which we see people come is as far as Ethiopia. Which is almost as far as northern Kenya where South Sudan is. And so the catchment area that people come to Chikoria is huge. Several 100,000, if not a million people, is the catchment area that we see with that. And so with that, the people coming further away are the ones that
Bring a lot of the
bring a
animistic.
lot of like the animist beliefs or the Muslim beliefs or things like that.
Well, hey, let's pray for you guys, okay, as we wrap it up. And again, avail yourself to some of these prayer cards and so forth, okay? But thank you so much, both of you guys.
Thanks.
Father, thank you for this time we can have together here tonight, Lord, and we just ask for your continued blessing and guidance upon Derek and Lauren and their family. Thank you so much for using them, and may you continue to use them, whether it's in Africa or their time over here in America, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.